Well, pulling the glass, side windows came out pretty easy. Back was definitely more of a fight, but I got it out one piece. However, my streak of never being able to pull a windshield without cracking it continues. I was getting all the stuff out. It was going great. Started trying to push on it and cracks. Dang it. And this was kind of a double-edged sword to begin with, because there's a very good chance that an air cleaner is going to need to live right here based on our engine setback. So I was already looking at maybe not being able to use the glass anyway, and yeah, this kind of just makes that moot point at this, or makes it, yeah, how would you say that? Makes it irrelevant at this point, because I'm not gonna continue trying to save this one and put a broken piece of glass back in. It's just, I'm not interested in doing that. And I know this windshield already had a bunch of weld slag burns into it here from, let's see, what was it? I was welding a washer to the throttle cable because the end broke off, so I could have a functional throttle cable again. So, story from way back. Anyway, so not the best windshield to even begin with, but I would, if it'll fit everything and I can keep the glass, I'd really like to just keep the glass in order to, just for the resistance and stuff, and not go to a Lexan setup where it's probably going to scratch a whole bunch. I'd rather just not deal with that kind of maintenance. But yeah, at this point I got what I got at this point. Got some more sheet metal pulled from the inside. You can see I cut it up there to get the back all opened up here. So all of this is open now. Mostly I need space here to fit my main hoop, which I made a cardboard template of the roof and the sides. As far as they fit, the line was set with the laser level so that I knew exactly how far down from the line to go to the frame. So now I'll be able to figure out my main hoop length needed, add a little bit extra, mark center, and then from center I can go over, add the bends as I go. I'm planning to do a flat section in the middle, 2 degrees on either side to follow the roof profile a little bit tighter, and then we'll do a 74-degree bend down to a 14-degree bend, and then drop all the way down. Obviously, I still got to figure out the lengths in between and where those bends are actually going to end up. But now that I have a template kind of a thing, I can start with the 2-degree bends and then go on to the 74 and keep check fitting it as I go against my cardboard template, instead of being impossible to check fit it in the car and then bend the whole thing only to find out that it's off. It's 38 degrees out and I got the doors wide open because I'm wearing a sweatshirt, trying to keep as much of the just hot metal from drilling and grinding off of me with the hood up. Try to keep it out of my hair too. I'm pouring sweat right now. Ugh. But making more progress, getting basically all of the roof supports out. I really didn't want to take this big one out. However, just the way things were lined up, it was still going to be in the way of where I want to put the cage. So really, I got to get the cage in, get it fit, get it dropped down, weld the top, and then put it back up, and then build gussets off the cage into the body. I'm back and forth about design on that right now, because while it really would be really cool to do a bunch of dimple die stuff and kind of whatever to fancy it up a little bit and add a lot of strength, the hard part is I don't want to be doing something like that then when this thing goes to get blasted and then probably painted, where we're just gonna end up with a bunch of sand stuck in everywhere. I got a car at work that I'm dealing with that right now. I mean, granted, it was super, like, way rustier than this thing was. And I mean, I'm about a month into doing body work on that thing. But like, I had to clean out the rocker panels because they were packed full of blasting sand and mouse nest. And it was just, I mean, any little hole's gonna get somewhere. Like, I'm already thinking the holes I drilled for my hard lines for the fuel and the brakes, like, I'm gonna have to put bolts in those to make sure we're not getting any sand dropping into the frame. We're just gonna end up with a bunch of extra weight in there for no reason. And I don't want it to be like in multi-day project trying to get blasting sand out of this thing, especially when most likely if I gotta take it somewhere and pay somebody else to do it, they're just gonna blast it and start shooting it, and then at that point whatever primer or paint gets put on, it's just gonna seal all that sand in, and I don't want that. Also worth noting that while everything looks great because 90% of the metal is out, still got this entire spot welded lip all the way across, front and back, and some junk up here in the sides. Like, there's a lot more material to come out. We're at the point where it's gonna be, you know, the other 90% of the work to finish it up. Hopefully it's not 90%, but I don't know, I'm taking all the stuff off with a flap disc, so that should go pretty dang quick. A nice big heavy duty flap disc, and then some of this other stuff up here in the corner, that'll have to be a little more finessed. That's why I got that file sander. Stuff like that little tag hanging up would be perfect for the file sander. I really want to like start on the cage, but every time I like try to get myself to like, oh yeah, I'm gonna bend the main hoop, I keep looking at the car and it's like, well, I should just keep cutting stuff out of the way because it'll be a whole lot easier before there's a whole bunch of cage tubes in the way. And just, I don't know, I'm kind of sick of cutting things out of this car. I've now removed everything behind the B-pillar down to about this height, and there's only one little sheet left the rest of the way down, which is my support tubes are actually welded to. Right now, on the front, I took out a big reinforcement plate that was down here at the bottom, and I'm still trying to decide if I want to take out a bunch of the center panel because it sticks in, oh, at least an inch, maybe an inch and a quarter, and it's like, well, if I cut that out of the way, I'll have that much more room to move the cage out. Finally ready to start bending the main hoop and get it put in the car. Starting out with 2 clamp blocks here, we're going to be putting a pretty soft 2-degree bend off of these 2 clamp blocks just to get started. It's trying to match the curve of the roof up with the bar, or match the bar to the roof rather. And then we're going to use that template that I made to kind of go back and forth and check to make sure that we're getting the right shape, because I know that the cardboard fits pretty good. So as long as we keep the bends even on both sides as we go and get a best fit to the cardboard, it'll fit pretty good in the car. Now I need to move these blocks out to their next position. If I had more blocks, I could actually set blocks up for every single bend with it sitting on a flat surface and know that they're all going to be in plane. But that's a few $100s in extra blocks that I just don't usually need to have or want to spend. So I can move one at a time and keep them pretty dang close. The secondary check would be checking off of these bottoms where the pin goes in with the digital gauge after it's in the machine, and then I can correct any tiny little imperfection there. The big thing is you know, if we're less than a degree, like that'll, depending on which bend, that'll still compound and can make you way off by the time we get down to the frame of the base kind of a thing. So we want to check that as we go on every single time we have to move the blocks. But we do one at a time. It'll make sure that we're close, and then we can fine check with the digital gauge. This takes quite a bit of time of just back and forth where, you know, if we had a good flat surface right off the bat, we could have just clamped everything down and made it work. But taking that time to go back and forth will make sure that all of these bends are in the same plane on the main hoop and that we don't end up with any twist in it by the time we get from the roof to the frame. Now here's a great example where the cardboard comes in. I got my center line lined up. As you can see from the camera angle, there's cardboard exposed on the top here, and it's hiding behind the tube over here on my larger bend. These larger bends, I was doing some calculations and came with roughly 74 degrees. They're at 70 right now, and they definitely need to go farther, but because we've got this gap here on the top, I might need to actually move my clamp box back and bend some more on these 2-degree bends, because I might have actually needed 3 or 4 there, which will pull that in to line these outer edges up with the top of the cardboard again, and to get our angle down there at the same time while making it fit tighter to the roof. Downside here is I can't pull these clamp blocks off completely without losing where my rotation is at to test fit it in the car. But I might be able to set this up in the car a little bit and then measure up in a couple of places and make sure that the roof profile is working out. Definitely not an ideal situation here, but at least because I'm bending off a center and both ends should be the same length total and the frame should be the same height on both sides of the car, then I should be able to kind of check here how much we've got up to the top. We've got 8 1/8, like 8 3/8 on the driver's side though. One next to the block, we got touch over 8 1/2, 8 5/16. Alright, scratch all of that because you gotta make sure you're getting good measurements first. I didn't have the hoop centered to the car. Now it's a lot closer to center. We got 8 1/4, 8 and maybe a hair over 5/16. I don't know, let's go next to the block here. 8 1/2, 1/16 under 8 1/2. So yeah, that's a lot closer. And we've got 8 1/2, 8 1/2, 8 1/2. Yeah, a 1/16 under. So to have a variation across here of a 1/16 from end to end, as far as how it's going to match up to the roof profile, that tells me that these bends are actually pretty good, even though it's not matching up to my cardboard over there very nicely, and I should continue bending here and not mess with anything up here. Because as that all moves, if it all moves up 8 1/2 inches, it'll be touching all the way across. So yeah, helps to make sure you're measuring things right first. At this point, you might be like, but hey, it doesn't match your cardboard that you fit. Well, no, it doesn't, but the cardboard was to get us close. And really, let's talk about how accurate a person can make a piece of cardboard by holding it up inside the car by themselves and trying to draw lines on it and put it up, take it down, put it up, take it down, trim it, and all that, and how accurate I can actually get versus what I'm measuring off of a rigid piece of tube. At this point, these bends are not really all that critical about what they actually are, because they're just kind of positioning what that B-pillar shape is going to be. And on the cut list, that's a whole curved shape, and it's anywhere from 60 to 75 degrees. So 74 was kind of where I was shooting for a target. Now overbent a little bit there, so I'm gonna be, you know, got 74.9 on this side right now, and I ended up at 75.2 on that side. So I'll try to get to 75.2, or you know, within a tenth or two of a degree, just to make sure that we're close, because all that's really doing is just extending that length of that B pillar section before it gets the final bend down to the frame. And we got tons of room in the car there, so it really just doesn't matter that much about exactly what it is. The hard part about it's the spring back. The more we bend, the more spring back there is. And to try to get it just right each time, yeah, a little bit closer. There, we'll go with that. We're within 0.1 of a degree, side to side. Now the hard part is I feel like I'm going to be a little bit wide out here. Like maybe I should have shortened up a, I don't know, 1/4 inch maybe aside. The only tight spot we got is going to be, you know, right up at the curve towards the roof, which actually there might be plenty of room there anyway. For sure there's tons of room down in through here and all the rest of the way. But I want to be able to position my bend so that I end up at the correct outside dimension, and that's what's going to be a little bit tougher here. We're going to have to try to plan that out. I do have a pre-bent 90 that's probably going to be my best bet for lining it up, because then I can line up this edge and see where the point is going to come out, where it actually matches up, and then I can mark it, position the clamp based off of that. The hard part here is I don't have fancy software to make sure it all works, and I don't have all the fancy stuff to scan the whole car and design all this ahead of time. So we're building it as we go. You can see I'm just getting a rough position based off of that to kind of line everything up, and then I gave myself a little bit extra room by moving it over a little bit. I'm going off of this witness mark because I have it on both sides, and that is a witness mark from the die, so that's giving me a fixed position that I can then measure over from and mark for the clamp blocks to start my next bend. This time moving the clamp blocks can't really be done as a one at a time and move it, because we're drastically changing the angle that it's facing at. And just because, you know, this plane might match the angle of this plane when it's sitting, it doesn't mean that they're going to come out matching like that. So this time it'll be take both off and move them over, and then check that a distance from the center here matches the distance at the tails on the flattest piece of concrete we can find. Well, this side of the garage is actually pretty good. It's a newer piece of concrete. That's why I built the whole chassis on this side. So I'll be able to do that, and then the angle that they're at should be 180 off. I mean, they're not perfectly at like 180 from each other, but that'll get us dang close. And as long as the 3 points measure the same, we know that it is then sitting in a flat plane. And this screwing around should make it very obvious why having lots of clamp blocks makes things easier, especially doing a complex bend like a main hoop. The difference is that for pretty much all of the bends after the main hoop, we don't need as many clamp blocks, and it's not nearly as hard. Although the pillar bars that run along the top of the roof and then down the A-pillars, those are going to be difficult just because of multiple angles in those as well. However, you know, I fully expect that I might have to make a couple of scrap pieces getting those to fit the way I want, just because of how tight I'm trying to run it to everything. It's currently touching. Touching on that one. that one is just the teeniest air gap underneath it. Although it does look like it's touching from here. Then our blocks, if I set the block down against the floor, push it tight to the block and hold pressure against the block so that the floor is not influencing it. Zero it, go around. Got 0.2 if it's facing that way. And if I flip it over to face the other way, it's 0.05. So to be within 0.2 of a degree on both of these, I think we'll be just fine. I just grabbed the angle gauge to check from the top to the angle of this bar versus the angle of this bar. So 0, got just barely over 77 and just under 78. So I got a degree off along there. However, some of that might just be, like I said, the tail lengths, where this might be just ever so slightly part of that. So if I'm half a degree, you know, like the way it'll end up fitting in the car isn't going to make a difference. Yeah, but I was checking that because if I want my feet coming down to be at exactly 90 degrees, this tells me about how much bend I need. So with 77, 78, we need 12, 13 degrees of bend. Probably start at around 10 just to see where our actual width comes up, because I don't want to overbend and end up narrow to the frame. Another way to finalize these bends is to check your distance. And if I hook the tape measure on the inside of the tube up there and I go down to where about it would hook down here, I have 69 inches. I want 60 as the absolute maximum on the outside edges when I'm finished. So right off the bat, we know we got 69 plus another probably 2 to 2.5 inches. So really that's going to be what, 71.5 to get down to 60 for our outside to outside dimension. I don't know. I'll have to figure the math out, but there's a way to do it where I can keep hooked there and bend this part till I'm measuring to an outside dimension and then make sure that it's the same on the other side. That will also be a lot easier the closer to 90 they actually get. So like I said, might as well just start with 10 degrees and then go from there with this method. Now we're at the point with, we got 9.9 degrees of bend on this side and it was 9.6 on the other side. So just a little bit off on the bends right now, but now we can measure outside to outside and we have 62 5/8. So if we need to get that down to 60, it's going to be what, 1 5/16 per side. We've got just a touch more bend on this side, so we could probably trade a 16th on side to side with that. So I need to keep bending this side until we get to, let's see here, well, 62 5/8, well, 61 5/8, and then, so 61 5/16, so I'll add a 16th, we'll go to 61 3/8 on this side. But this is where we got to worry about spring back, because right now I've only bent it like an extra degree, not even. And we're at almost 61 already, but that's going to spring back. So we release the pressure. at 61 1/4. So I even went a little more than I wanted to, but that's all right. We got 1.5 inch tubing and a 2-inch wide frame rail, so I'm not worried about that. So we'll check the angle, make sure we can get them matched up side to side. And I've got 13.1 degree. So we were shooting for 12 and a half-ish, so yeah, a little bit over. But that's all right. We'll get it matched up. Boy, and I stopped early and it still went a little bit more. So we're about 1/4 inch under 60, which, you know, so that's a, what, 1/8 aside. Not a big deal. How's our angle? 0. I got 13.4, so 0.3 of a degree difference on the very last bit of our bend. Oh, we'll see how it fits in the car now. Well, I can't actually fit it in the car because the support braces I have in here are in the way, which I expected kind of going in, just because how snug and tight of a fit that this bar is. It actually tucks behind these door jambs. So I need like all the height I can get, and there's only a little bit of room for some twist in it to make it work out. And I'm getting held up by these bars. So I know I might leave the front one in for now, just to kind of hold that, because those are totally wobbly, whatever, up there. It just sucks because this was kind of triangulating all that stuff. And I don't know how much structure this is adding back here, although we got way more stuff going on back here. I think it'll be all right. Just gonna cut it out. And I know it's gonna be in the way for building cage. It's gotta come out. It's been a struggle bus to get it in there. However, I was able to get this tilted up and kind of check fit to the roof. It looks like it's going to fit great. I'm a little worried I'm too wide on my upper bends, but it's going to be really, really close. The next thing that's biting me in the butt is the height from the frame up to the roof. I added 2 inches to the length of the main hoop just to make sure we had some wiggle room, and now measuring with tape measure, it looks like we have 1.25 inches that needs to get cut off of both sides in order to make it work. So now I've got to finagle the thing back out, and then I'll cut that 1.25 inches off and check fit it again. Well, I ended up needing to cut an extra 1/4 inch off just to have enough wiggle room to get it in, which leads to a little bigger gap up here. But right now, like basically off of this edge on both sides, if the camera will focus in, there, off of that edge, both sides, I've got maybe 1/4 inch of wiggle back and forth. So side to side, I mean, that's how far it can move. So if I really, really wanted to go back and make sure this was absolutely tight to the roof, my bends out here are a little wide. I'd have to shorten it up. Well, probably, I don't know, 1/4 inch or so. And it would make that fit a lot tighter. However, I mean, this is not bad. And it looks like we got a little more space on top. Like I got a finger's width in there. I don't have a finger's width on the sides. So a little bit more bend on these two would tuck it up a little bit closer, but that's the other thing. This is angle here, this is flat across top anyway. There was gonna be a little bit more. But it's up nice and high. You know, really the only thing I need to worry about there is, you know, some kind of structural reinforcement to the roof. But at the same time right now, I mean, there's enough room. If I felt like dressing this car up a little bit and throwing a headliner in, it would fit in there right now. So, I don't know. It's kind of a little bit of give and take. I'm happy enough with this that I don't think it's worth bending another main hoop just to, you know, tighten up a 1/4 inch up on the roof. And even with putting it in, I gotta bend the main hoop quite a bit in order to get it to pop up over onto the top as it is, and it's deflecting the roof up in that corner anyway. So it's, I mean, it's really a snug fit. See, our sides are nice here. The plan is once this sheet metal gets removed, it'll be something that comes off of the door and kind of just wraps around or passes right over the top of it altogether. I mean, honestly, when this is done and by the time I put some, I don't know, dress up or whatever you want to call it, kind of panels on, or interior panels, if you will, really you're not going to be able to see much of the cage. Like, there'll be the main hoop on the top, you know, the X bracing and the harness bar, but like most of the side's going to end up hidden. The door bars are actually going to be on the outside of this panel or passing through it partially. But yeah, no, I'm real happy with how this is coming out for a first tube. Now there's a couple of different ways to do the forward bars. And one of them is a halo, where you come back, turn, follow the top of the windshield across, and then go back to the main hoop. The other one's A-pillar bars, which come along the top of the window. They'll curve down the A-pillar and then curve again and go all the way down to the floor. That method was my original plan because I want to tuck a bar in real nice and tight to this A-pillar as far as I can anyway, and would then roll it up into here. This is kind of a odd curve here, and I'm sure there is a angle where it does work out pretty well. It just might be really difficult to figure that out, and it's going to make these two tubes very difficult to make. With the other option, I was kind of ignoring the halo because depending on how it intersects, it's really hard to figure out this fit up. And I've gone through a couple of bars before trying to get that fit up to be nice. However, with it sitting up here and grabbing another piece of tube and letting it in, boy, if it doesn't land almost dead center, being supported by the A-pillar and coming into that tube, this will actually be not that bad of a fit up. It should actually be a pretty easy one. It might still take a few attempts, but going with the halo bar is probably my best option, especially for being able to tuck it in really tight over the door and up against the windshield. Now the door section here is going to be a pretty straight shot. It's going to be angled in just slightly on the car in order to get to match up here nice, but we can go all the way to the back and land nice and centered on our main hoop. Coming forward, our bend is going to be less than 90 to get to the windshield, and I'll probably need to do a few bump bends along the windshield just because it's a curved surface the whole way. And if we're wanting to maximize height, there might be a couple of bump bends along the roof as it's, you know, curved longitudinally with the car. But I think that'll be the plan. Let's try to make a halo bar for this thing now. I should point out that typically, normally I'd go right to doing the down bars and get the main hoop all squared in and set. But I don't want to do that quite yet because the way it's working out, I have a good 2 inches of wiggle room down on the frame, and with almost nothing other than this little detent in for the window, where I can move it back and forth, which will make fitting up the halo bar a lot easier because I've got that wiggle room, and it'll also make it a lot easier to get it in there and then get everything fit just right. And then I've got the wiggle room on the main hoop. It doesn't have to be locked into a specific position. So I'll be able to move that back and forth, where if I fixed it and then try to get the halo to fit up, maybe I'll have to compromise up on the windshield in order to get it to fit right, especially with the cope needing to wrap over the top of the tube. So just by having the main loose yet, we'll have wiggle room to really be able to fit everything and try to keep it all real tight. All right, we're back to arts and crafts. Reusing the piece of cardboard for the main hoop because the roof section's a little bit narrower. So reprofiled the edge to match the windshield, and I just kind of roughly ran it down the sides. I was able to push this up to the roof on the inside, and it fits pretty good. It's definitely wider on the edges than our tube is going to be able to be. So I'm probably going to have to use a couple pieces of tube just to kind of clamp in place and test fit on each side so I can get a width that I need. And then from there, I'll be able to check distances and come up with a tube length, as well as being prepared to make a couple of spaced bump bends to set that curve on the front. All right, here's some quick math on it. I know I need legs of about 28 inches. That'll leave extra to cut off on the ends by the main hoop. Roughly looks like about a 85-degree bend to match up with a windshield. This was based off of using my 90-degree going from the bend start over to the end of the tube at 6 inches. It was probably about a half-inch gap. Math there comes out to like 4.87 or something like that degrees. So we'll just call that 5 to get it to match up. Marking that on both sides of the car, I got 34 3/8 between them. That means we got 10 degrees that needs to be eaten up along the windshield in bends. If we put the math in for that, based on the 10 degrees and the chord length, so that's C going straight across, since I'm taking a straight measurement, we're only talking a little over a 32nd of an inch, less than a 16th. So honestly, I'm not even going to worry about that difference. We'll just calculate off of the 34 3/8 just to make sure that, like, as we're doing the bends, we will give ourselves just a little bit of clearance side to side for any error. So to do things a little bit different on this bar, I'm going to get the big bends out of the way first. It's going to end up where I got kind of a taper shape going on, but then I'm thinking I should be able to get it kind of laid in place and look at where the best places to do the bump bends are instead of just randomly taking a guess at it. At least that's my thought process here. I'm not going to be able to like test fit it into the car, but if I got the bulk bends out of the way, I should be able to center it on the piece of cardboard, kind of how I got it laid out there. And there might just be a few better places, because if I look at like the edges of the windshield area, like it curves more there than it does in the center. So it might be a progressive curve across the whole thing. So I don't just want to go and bump evenly and end up with an even curve when it's what do you call it? An asymmetric curve? How's that for lining up that front curve? I actually didn't even overthink this one. I ended up with my bends at 84.4 is what I did, because I figured that was close enough to 85. And then I didn't even move the clamp blocks there. I just pulled my support roller out so that I could slip the blocks all the way through the machine, and then I just flipped it over. So basically our bends are just opposite sides of the block. So we got a little bit of straight here, we got some straight here, and then the bends. This looks really good. The only thing I don't know about is like the final dimension of what's going to line up best on the main hoop at the back. I measured it out, got something that's in the ballpark, so I think I'm ready to pull the clamp blocks off and check that. How's that for an initial test fit? Can you even see it? It's a lot flatter over the door than I expected, but there should probably still be a small bend right there in the middle. I am a little surprised at how much gap there is here. So the roof is a lot more crowned side to side than I was expecting. So we can obviously probably do a small bend to get it to sit up a little higher right here. That'll help it tuck in. And then on the sides here, as it's coming across, I mean, really it's not too bad. There's definitely a little space right here. And we're probably gonna wanna put that bend in there too, just to angle this part down a little bit to make it match up with the main hoop better. I can't actually get the main hoop back in there just because it's hitting against here because of how tight the fit is. So being able to add these bends, it's not gonna be much. It's gonna be very little actually to bend it, and then we'll definitely need to cut a little bit off and start the cope on there to get it to match up. So things get a lot more complicated here because in order to bend the correct direction, I have this piece upside down right now because when it's in the roof, I want it to curve, you know, till the crown is at the roof, but the bender is bending the other way, so we got to have it flipped over. And then I also needed to, I had my blocks set to here, which meant I would have had to put it through the machine backwards, so I just moved them to the opposite side of the bend. All I had to do was make sure that we had enough to hit the support roller, which is no problem. It's certainly at that, and we're just going to be trying to put like 1 degree of bend in these. It doesn't need much. I don't want to overdo it or it's going to make all kinds of weird goofiness up there. So just a tiny amount of bend, and then I'll set up and calculate it needs to be about 1.7 degrees in the center up here in order to match up to that roof crown. So that one will be more difficult, but I want to get these side ones out of the way. We'll be able to put it back in, check fit it, just to make sure kind of a thing. But at this point, I'm just like, I want to get 1 degree of bend in there, and I'll go try to put the 1.7 in, and then we'll test fit it. Now we've got it tucked up there. Front can maybe use a little more bend up, but at this point, I think it's really good. Especially along here, ended up having to bend more there. I had to bend more in the front. Like just everything I can to try to get it tucked. But now I mean, it's barely any wiggle room in there. Can't even get a pinky in. You know, there's maybe a little bit more space here with them 2 flats, but that's again because we couldn't bend a nice perfect radius for that. Had to put multiple bends in it, but yeah. I'm also realizing very quickly that for as hard as each individual piece is to put in here, there's absolutely no way I'm tacking anything together and being able to remove it. Case in point, you know, once right up here, once I get this cut and coped to the main hoop, if I try to tack it and slide it back, the main hoop might slide back, the halo might slide back, but the main is only going to go to this edge where that window where it bumps out, and then it's going to kind of jam up. And I can't pull the lower legs in like I do to get it in there because it won't drop down anyway because of this overhang here. So the only way to be able to be fully welding this is going to be cutting holes in the roof. And I don't know, that seemed like a scary thing to do before, but at this point, it's not that big a deal. I've been doing enough sheet metal work lately that I'm not too worried about it. Like it'll be a nice little spot. I can just cut it. I can include the bend on the edge of the roof, and it'll be a nice piece that I can just patch in there. And as long as I make it oversized enough that I can get to at least most of it to be able to do a little bit of hammer dolly work anyway, it shouldn't be that big a deal to get it straightened back out enough to just put a little bit of light body filler on. And the car body not being right strikes again here. So I've got the halo made. It's even all the way around, like to the point that right now it is sitting nice and tight. I got super lucky and did it on the first cut. I managed that by holding up my test piece and then kind of marking where center of the tube was going to end up, and it was a little offset from actual center. But dang, does it fit nice on the first cut here. And I just randomly took 3/4 of an inch deep on both sides. It fits really good on like 75% of the tube. So not worried about the rest of it there, because I'll be able to fix some of it with the down tubes in the back on top, or just need to fill it in. But it's fitting really nice right now. It's actually on the window openings on both sides of the car. It's pinched into that little like first step there too. And the main hoop is basically locked in place with nothing holding it right now, which is awesome. I'd really love to keep that. However, when I get down to the bottom, I'm, I don't know, roughly 1/2 inch to maybe a little bit more off from the chassis. I measure from the main hoop to the windshield area. I measure to the factory stamping sheet metal stuff. I measure to this opening. It's consistent both sides of the car, but on the chassis, from the chassis squareness on both sides, it's off. And I don't know, this is gonna bug me. It's really gonna bug me. And I'm almost thinking I'm just gonna leave it matched to the body, because if I do anything to try to, shift or twist it, like at that point I'm forcing my main hoop out of plane, and all of the finishing sheet metal work I do that might leave some exposed cage tubes, it's gonna look really obvious because there's only the body to compare it to. You're not gonna be able to see the chassis itself. So I'm annoying. It's annoying is what it is, but I don't know, we established before in previous videos that this car doesn't match side to side. Like, I bet there ain't a single G-body that got built that matched side to side. So, it's everything from the door locations to the wheel well openings in the back. Like, it doesn't match. So, this is where we're at, but this thing fits great.